He's a trusted voice in conservative politics and one of the rare truth tellers on CNN, where he's a senior political contributor and battles it out nightly with his liberal co-panelist. Scott has written an inside account of President Trump's second term. It's called A Revolution of Common Sense, how Donald Trump stormed Washington and fought for Western civilization. Scott takes you into the room, the Oval Office decisions, the strategy aboard Air Force One, and the mission to restore American strength at home and abroad. I sat down with him at the Republican Jewish Coalition Summit in Las Vegas to hear more. Scott Jennings, great to have you back with us. A Revolution of Common Sense. The book is out now. First of all, congratulations. Secondly, Donald Trump, and you opened the book with some great anecdotes about your meetings with him in the Oval Office, or your first meeting with him in particular. Why is he, and we'll unpack all of it, why is he different than any other leader we see in the world right now? What sets him apart and makes him so successful?
Well, I think a couple of things. Number one, his willingness to not be hemmed in by the way we've always done it. That's the one thing that kept coming up in my conversations with him, the cabinet, other people that I spoke to, the observations I had with his meetings. He is just not going to be hemmed in by, well, we always did it that way. And so when you're talking about trying to forge peace in the Middle East, or you're talking about economic policy, there's always people in Washington that want to say, well, we can't do that. We've never done that before. That's the last thing you want to tell Donald Trump. He is truly an outside the lines thinker at a time when people want political leaders to think that way. The other thing I learned is, writing this book, he picked the team for this administration that's right for his management style. I think the first time around, good people, but not a match for his leadership style. This time around, the team that he picked knows how to work with him, and they know how to execute on his leadership style. That is what allowed them to move so quickly. And I think they learned a lot the first time around. They picked the team for him this time. And, I don't know a Trump supporter who isn't over the moon happy with the results. I mean, they've moved faster and farther than anybody thought possible.
Yeah, number one, Scott, great points all around. He is an outside-the-box thinker. Imagine that. We think of the Gaza plan and his suggestions there. That's just one thing, and we'll get into that. But number two, what I took away from the book, he is firmly in charge.
Yes.
He is he's got a great team, a dream team around him, but he is the decision maker. Talk more about that, his decisiveness.
So the first time I went to meet with the president about all this in early February, I thought I was meeting with him alone, and I walked into the Oval Office and most of the cabinet was in there. And I watched him for a couple of hours conduct about 6 meetings at the same time and instruct people to do this, go find that out, come back. I watched this whole orchestration of all this stuff. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, I have no idea who was running the country the last 4 years, but I sure as heck know who's running it right now. And so, love it or hate it, Donald Trump, the elected president of the United States, is firmly in charge, and the nerve center of this government is the Oval Office behind the Resolute desk. There was nothing he wasn't dealing with that day, and I think the team is great, but he's the decider. He is the decision maker, and he is very granular. The other thing I learned about observing him, he's a good listener. He likes to listen to people debate. He will ask questions. But his leadership style is to really pay attention and listen. I think the caricature of him is that he would just have preconceived ideas and wouldn't care what anyone thought. That's not true. He listens to these advisors have conversations and debate, and then he makes decisions. But he's decisive. I think one of the problems with Biden, frankly, and this was historically his problem, just indecisiveness, hand-wringing. You don't get that with Trump. Once he makes a decision, the decision is made, and it's firm, and everybody knows to go execute.
Yeah, number one, he's built for this, but secondly, I don't think he sleeps.
No.
He's a force of nature.
No.
He's a machine.
Yes.
And it's the antithesis, of course, Scott, as you mentioned, of Joe Biden and the Biden years. Can you talk about, and you talked about the accomplishments, incredible the first 10 months here. I mean, amazing. This is the accomplishments we may see over an 8-year tenure for most presidents. He's done it in just a few months. But can you talk about the mess he was left with that he inherited from the Biden administration on all levels, culturally, socially, foreign policy, economically? It was a disaster.
Well, go down the list. I mean, number one, our immigration system was a disaster. And I think one of the reasons he was elected in the first place and then reelected is because of the immigration crisis in this country. We haven't passed any new laws on immigration, but the border is somehow closed. We now have internal enforcement. What I have learned is that the old administration had policies designed to have the border open and not enforce existing federal law. The only thing Donald Trump has done is say, let's just enforce the law.
Right.
Novel concept for a president, but that's what he's doing. That was a mess, but it is solved. He inherited an economic mess, an inflationary mess caused by Joe Biden's policies, and he's still digging out from that. Probably one of the things that's nagging him the most, just how deep of a hole Biden had put us in economically. But he passed the big, beautiful bill. He kept taxes low. He's deregulating on the energy front. He's rebalancing our trade relationships. But I think it will take time for all these things to flesh out and pan out. On the world stage, I mean, the biggest thing he inherited was a weak America. Our president was weak. We had weak leadership. We had feckless leadership. We had indecisive leadership in the Oval Office. And now
Afghanistan withdrawal in 2021 and went downhill from there.
Of course. And so the world looked at us as a diminishing player. Now they look at us as the world's indispensable superpower once again. And look what happens when the American president is strong. You can solve wars. You can bring people to the table. You can get hostages back, which he's done all over the country, all over the world, I should say, certainly in the Middle East, out of Russia even. Strong American leadership matters. And so reversing that trend culturally, another reason he was elected in 2024, the Democrats had gone off into the cultural ditch on transgender ideology and a whole bunch of other things, DEI. He's ended all of that. He's reversed that. The pendulum is swinging back. People are grateful that he has made it so that you can just tell the truth again. You can just say what everyone's thinking again. And more than anything, I think he has just instilled a sense of common sense. That's why I called the book A Revolution of Common Sense. He used that phrase in his inaugural address. When he said it, I thought, that's the book. That is the most genius political branding. Yeah. And on his 100th day in office, I flew with him to Michigan, and he said, I'll paraphrase, whether you're right or whether you're left, it doesn't matter what you are, it's just common sense. And you talk to people who are not really all that politically engaged, maybe they've never voted before. They were attracted to the common sense nature of what he's trying to do. So, and of course, what Biden was doing on so many fronts was outsourcing his agenda to people so far on the radical left that everything they were doing felt like nonsense, uncommon nonsense. But he has to reverse all that. And we're well on our way to doing it. And I know his advisors are happy with the progress they've made. I did talk to one of them during the process of writing the book, and I said, he seems to be doing so many things on a daily basis. And the advisor said, well, he knows he doesn't have much time to save the country. And that's why he's moving so quickly, because he knows how close to the brink we really were.
Well, there's a sense of urgency. And Scott, you've common sense for sure. And on CNN, as you're jousting with leftists every night, you've called these 80-20 issues.
Yeah.
80% of the American people agree on where President Trump stands, and the other 20 is on the fringe, and it's madness. One of those, obviously, the gender madness. You referenced it a minute ago, men in women's locker rooms, little children being mutilated.
Yeah.
Talk more about that, because I think on day one, President Trump, as he was inaugurated, signed an executive order banning that, child sex change mutilations. Talk more about that, how that factors into common sense. This is, when we talk about saving Judeo-Christian Western civilization, if we can't save our kids, it seems, then we can't save the civilization.
Well, I think if you can erase someone's gender in the way that the left wants to be able to do it, you can erase them from the law. I mean, we have immutable characteristics, God-given immutable traits. And that is connected to the way we do civil rights in this country. But if you can erase those, if you can change those, they're no longer immutable. You can erase people from the law. That's what they're doing to women. I think the Republican Party under Donald Trump is fighting for true civil rights, especially the civil rights of women. Because what the left was doing was effectively saying, they can't define what a woman is. You can become one, and that
they can't answer.
And when you start to really go down that rabbit hole, what you start to realize is well, they're devaluing women in this way. Trump said no more. I think one of the most iconic photos that he took in the first 100 days was having all those female athletes at the White House, where he signed the executive order about banning men from women's sports. And then what happened? The U.S. Olympic Committee, or the International Olympic Committee, followed suit. And they're not going to allow that in future Olympics. And so leadership on this has consequences. And it's also, I think, given a permission structure for everybody out there just to say, finally, we don't have to tiptoe around this anymore. There's a heck of a lot of people out there and a bunch of liberal Democrats who don't want their little girls having to swim against or play volleyball against boys. They don't want boys in their girls' locker rooms. And they felt trapped by their own political party. And Donald Trump has come along and put an end to this nonsense.
Scott, can you talk about that last point? Look, the left now, and again, you're battling every night on CNN, of course, in the lion's den, but where the Democrat Party is now, where the left is right now, and what President Trump is up against there, and honestly, what we averted last November with a Harris-Walz administration, God forbid, where are they right now? They're in the political wilderness, it seems, but ideologically, they're way out there on the far left and the radical left.
Well, they're in the thrall of a bunch of radical progressive socialists, and they don't even really try to hide it anymore. They're proud to call themselves socialists. The beating heart of the Democratic Party right now is this socialist energy, the Mamdani energy, the AOC energy. That's where all the energy is in their party. They held it off in 2020 and in 2016. I don't know if they're going to be able to hold it off anymore. And honestly, look, there's part of me that says, well, I guess that's good for the Republicans because the more radical they get, the more anti-American they become, the easier it is for Republicans to win. But I don't think it's good for one of our two political parties to be going down this very anti-American, anti-capitalist, anti-free market path. It's antithetical to the founding of the country. It's not good for our political culture for one of our parties to be captured, I think, by this ideology. And of course, the only way to change it is to keep beating them in elections. They have a very low image right now. But at the same time, a lot of people who used to be Democrats, I think about my father, who was a blue-collar guy from West Kentucky, was the biggest Clinton guy I ever knew. I come from a family of Democrats.
Yeah.
He was the first person to tell me that Donald Trump was going to be the president. And like a lot of people back then, I thought, oh, come on.
Yeah.
But he knew because all of his contemporaries, his peers, working class guys from middle America, they knew what was happening to their old party. They knew that party didn't represent them anymore. Trump comes along and he speaks in the way that people like my dad would speak if anybody ever bothered to put a microphone in his face.
Yeah.
And that's the magic of the political movement. He recognized how far outside the mainstream the Democrats had become. And he said, look, I don't want you to, think too deeply about political ideologies. I just want you to think about common sense. You called them 80-20 issues. That's what I called them. But I think I was wrong. I think some of them are 90-10, 95-5, especially
right.
and on these cultural matters. And Trump knew it. And by the way, he's not afraid. How many of us walk around this world and we know what the truth is, but we're afraid? What will happen to us at work? What will happen to us at school? What will happen to us in our social circles? The man fears nothing. Yeah. And when you fear nothing and you show that kind of leadership, it gives confidence to everybody else.
Yeah, I can so relate to your story about your dad. I grew up in a working class neighborhood in Northeast Philadelphia. A lot of Democrats all flipped to the Trump column. It was amazing to watch it unfold. And for the reasons you mentioned, hey, we can't talk about President Trump's leadership, Scott, without talking about how he uses leverage and peace through strength.
Yes.
Economically, and now look, we have trillions of dollars of foreign investment coming into the United States. And obviously the big foreign policy wins. You were in Israel during the 12-day war as it broke out. Talk about his approach to foreign affairs and dealing with other countries.
Well, a couple of things. Number one, he negotiates from a position of strength, whereas Biden was always from a position of weakness. So that automatically advantages us when we're talking to countries about anything. Number two, he firmly believes in tariffs. He believes that tariffs are more than just an economic policy. He views them as a tool of national diplomacy and national security. It's one of his longest and most deeply held political views.
Big William McKinley fan.
Yes. I mean, I think in his heart of hearts, if he could go back to a world where our government was just based on tariffs, we didn't have income taxes and everything else, we didn't have an IRS, that's what he would do. I think he believes that's what the country would best run on. That's his theory. Now, it's interesting, and I write about this in my book, this is not where the Republican Party has traditionally been. It's not what Republicans were trained to believe by Ronald Reagan and others. And so I would say on that issue, that's probably the area of Republican orthodoxy that he has changed the most. And it'll be interesting to see after he leaves office whether that policy continues to be a central pillar of the Republican platform or not. And of course, we'll have to see how it plays out. I think what he's done economically is put America first and American workers first, and he's using policies to reshore jobs and try to give us greater advantages. And, look, the American people will ultimately decide if they want this to continue or not. his fervent view is that we will have more jobs, people will have better paying jobs, and we're not going to be taken advantage of by other countries. That'll be, the Republican Party's future to continue to carry that forward. And look, I think J.D. Vance is going to be the next nominee, and obviously he believes in it too. So I think on the world stage, it's just position of strength, using the tools that are available and not being hemmed in by old ideologies or old, we can't do it that way. It's made him a really powerful president. And we needed one because what we had before was so weak.
Yeah, and great point. You see him in Egypt recently, Scott. After the Gaza ceasefire deal is announced, he goes next door to Egypt for meetings there. I mean, world leaders clamoring to have their picture with him, to talk to him, to get a moment with him. One thing that strikes me about him is he'll talk to anyone.
Yes.
China, Russia, North Korea. If he could, he would talk to Iran. But as you said, he always does it from a position of strength.
And he does it from a position of, what kind of deal can I get for America? I talked to Marco Rubio for my book, and it's one of the things he impressed upon me, is that the beginning and ending of every strategic conversation they have is, what are we trying to get out of this for the United States of America? It's one of the reasons they reorganized the State Department and our foreign aid system. They had determined that it just wasn't being operated in a way that was serving America's best interest on the foreign stage. It doesn't make foreign aid bad. It just means the bureaucracy that had grown up around it wasn't necessarily in service of the foreign policy of the American government. Rubio told me, in fact, that there were multiple times where the foreign aid distribution system was doing things at cross purposes with whatever the ambassador in that country thought was the best thing to do for America's relationship with that particular area. Well, they said, even though we've always done it this way, we can reorganize it and put it back on a footing of what's best for America. I think that's the question he asks himself. I'm negotiating with a company. I'm negotiating with a foreign government. I'm negotiating with Democrats. Whatever I'm negotiating with, the question is, what's best for America? What's best for the United States? They start there, and then he gets as close to that as possible, and I think he's got a pretty darn good track record of it.
It truly is America first. Imagine that.
Yeah.
Hey, for the book, you had incredible access, by the way. President Trump, of course, Marco Rubio, various members of the administration. What struck you the most about how this administration operates? Obviously, as you said earlier, he's firmly in charge, but do you get a sense, in the first term, there were some people who weren't on board with the MAGA agenda, I think, who were working in the administration, but now it seems to be a very unified kind of message and worldview coming out of the administration. He's got his people, it seems, now around him.
Yes, the people that he has hired for this administration at the cabinet level and at the staff level know how to operate under his leadership style. I think that was the difference between Trump 2 and Trump 1. It doesn't make those people from the first term bad. They just weren't a fit. You ever take a job where you and your boss just weren't a fit for each other? Of course. I mean, it happens. In this administration, they knew they were going to win. They thought they were going to win. They had a plan. They had the idea of who they wanted to bring in for most of these jobs. They've made inspired picks. Rubio is the best Secretary of State we've ever had.
Agreed.
Scott Bessent is a beast. Okay. Lee Zeldin over at EPA, the things he's done on the endangerment finding, these are the consequential decisions. Go down the line, and all these people that he chose hit the ground on day one, executing on his agenda. They didn't wait. They're not sitting around. They're not over there enjoying the trappings of the offices. They're in and out of the West Wing all day, getting instructions from the president about what to do next. They've been told, move quickly. And they have all followed that instruction, and it's working. When you think about what he promised and what they're delivering, he's checked a lot of boxes from the campaign, and his voters are happy about it.
No doubt. It's almost a counter-revolution, I guess you could say, to the madness we saw in the prior 4 years.
Well, I'll tell you something about the prior 4 years. You had a president who obviously wasn't fit for office. We're now learning about that. You had an unelected staff that was making all kinds of decisions. And, you had a president who had campaigned on being this moderate deal maker who then totally outsourced his domestic policy agenda to the radicals in his party. He sold the American people a bill of goods. I'm capable and I'm moderate. Yeah. None of that was true. What Donald Trump told the American people is exactly what I'm going to do. And now he's doing it. You can say a lot of things about Donald Trump, but A, you can never accuse him of not telling us what's on his mind. And B, you can't accuse him of anything other than following the things that he said in the campaign. He is making promises come true. Now, look, The American people will have decisions to make in 26 and 28, but the man keeps his promises, you have to admit.
Yeah, it's got about a minute left. Last question. The book chronicles the first months of President Trump's return to office. What do you see coming in the next 3 years? What are some things maybe we can expect, some big initiatives coming down the pike perhaps with this administration?
Well, I think a continued focus on winning the AI race. I asked President Trump not too long ago, actually, is the fight for control of AI with China, is this your version of the space race or the Cold War? And he said it's all of that wrapped up into one. So it's making sure that the United States is firmly in control of the parameters of AI in the future and that we make enough energy to win it. To me, when you think about like legacy, winning AI battles against China and making enough energy to win the battles, this isn't a short-term issue. This is a long-term national security issue, and I know his commitment to it.
Wow, Scott, amazing. There's so much to cover in the book, by the way. Doge, you have a chapter on Doge.
Interviewed Elon.
Yes, you did. The most secure border in American history. It came about in about a week after he came into office. You chronicle all of them in the book. It's a great one, Scott. We're glad you wrote it. Good work, my friend. God bless. We appreciate it. Keep it up.
Thank you very much, Scott. Appreciate it.
Great job. Stakelbeck Tonight, my all-new nightly series on current events through a bold biblical lens. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching, and God bless.